Thank you everyone for joining us today for our webinar entitled Identifying MSP Partners with Channel Navigator. I'm Clark Richter. I'm the founder of Channel Navigator, actually a FASA LLC company, as we'll get to in a second. My contact information is there. I'll give it at the end as well. If you have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Our agenda today is going to be to kind of frame the conversation around channel marketing issues that we see and how we might help you address those. We're going to give you an overview of what the Channel Navigator is and our methodology. And we'll spend the bulk of our time in a specific use case of a backup and recovery vendor trying to identify some managed service provider partners through a demonstration of actually using the tool online, and then we'll conclude with a Q&A. Everybody should be on mute. If you do have a question, you can hit *6 to unmute yourself, and you can interrupt me if you want. I'm all right with that. Or you can keep the questions to the end, or don't ask any questions, and just email me afterwards if you have any specific questions. So to start with, just to kind of give you a little bit of background, we're incorporated under the name FASA LLC, which is loosely a Latin term for channel. We launched the company in February of last year. My background is primarily in the areas of network security and virtualization, data center types of solutions. Over 15 years, starting out in the VAR, at a VAR, and then working for various manufacturers, both in channel development, enterprise sales, and sales management. We have 5 full-time employees. For any of those that are joining just now, we are gotten underway. We're kind of on the first slide here. So the parent company, FASA, also does channel development consulting and operates 2 different websites. We're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about Channel Navigator today, which is a subscription-based channel development tool. But then we also publish that same database to the general public in an IT solution provider locator called iRumbo that's targeted more at IT buyers to utilize that same data. We have customers that span a variety of different areas, from vendors, service providers, recruiters, and VARs or solution providers themselves. We primarily work with channel marketing and sales people in all the different areas of IT, in particular applications, security, storage, networking, virtualization, telecom, you name it. So kind of run the gambit. So sort of frame the conversation today around channel marketing, some of the challenges that we see. One of the reasons why I founded this company was I moved from company to company. Everybody had Salesforce.com, and I realized most of these companies were working with the same channels or after the same channels, but very few of them actually had much intelligence on their partners. They could maybe segment a partner versus non-partner. They may know a title, but they oftentimes didn't even have a level or a department to do any targeted marketing towards them. So that was kind of the origin of it, seeing a gap in intelligence that is provided in the channel. The traditional data sources that you'd look to provide information on businesses rely to a great deal on antiquated NAC and SIC codes, and these don't really keep pace with the IT industry for how companies define themselves. And specifically, they don't really have anything on what the vendor relationships that many of these businesses have. The IT industry being as large as it is, it seems like there should be a solution that kind of fulfills this need for people to enrich their own CRM systems. It's a dynamic industry that we work in. There's a lot of employee turnover, mergers and acquisitions, as you're all aware. Many of you work for publicly traded companies, and we're very driven by quarterly metrics. And of course, management always changes the priorities during the course of the year and wants to shift their focus. So we're trying to provide a tool that helps you adapt to that. The majority of channel companies are private businesses, and there's very limited information publicly available on them. And finally, as a marketing organization, you have limited funds, and everybody requires that you demands that you provide an ROI on what you spend. And everybody is, of course, looking for quality versus quantity in terms of channel partners. And the final point is, the main mechanism for updating a lot of CRM systems is really your own internal employees, which are oftentimes very highly paid to be doing that type of administrative task. As an example, if you do the math on a $100,000 a year salesperson adding a contact to a CRM system, it costs about $2 in time for them to do that. Segueing now into an overview of our database and what we're providing, we've got about 12,000 business headquarters identified in the database. About 2,000, over 2,400 actually, are managed service providers, and that's what we'll spend our time talking about in our example today. We cover most technologies, but really our strength is probably in security, data center, and infrastructure types of solution providers. We have over 40 fields for you to identify and filter these businesses on. One of the most valuable aspects you'll find is really the multi-vendor relationships we have mapped out, as well as the profiles of how they define themselves on solutions, services, and technologies, and it'll make a little more sense to you when we get into the examples. And then we've done the legwork of identifying and validating 60,000 contacts for these businesses, and then we provide you different ways to segment those from a marketing standpoint. Our methodology is pretty straightforward. We go and identify resellers and partnerships through public internet sources, big companies that list their partners out there. We get that baseline of information into our database along with some of the basic information, and then we have analysts that go out and visit the website, update the basic account information, and it's an ongoing process from there. We do offer for these businesses to take over their profile and manage it for us, so many of them do opt in to do that, and that is through our iRumbo public solution provider locator. And then we go out and identify and populate the key contacts, primarily focused on sales and technical contacts from the staff on up to the management level. We validate emails monthly. We regularly purge out around 2 to 3% of the emails, and we're regularly touching about 15 to 20% of the accounts to update some field or another, not necessarily all the fields in there. And we try to verify their partnership levels annually. We have a variety of different ways that people use our database. This is primarily a marketing audience here today, so that's what we're going to talk about the bulk of. But one of the strengths is we give the ability of the sales and the marketing department to kind of work from the same solution. We have companies that are early stage that really map out their potential channel and then actively market to the potential channel through the database. We're used a lot for recruitment campaigns for maybe a specific new area you're getting into or a newer company. We are used for just populating baseline the information on in your own CRM system on your own existing business partners as well as other potential business partners. We have individual subscribers that are channel managers or salespeople that are trying to identify new partners. We also even have solution providers themselves that use us to identify acquisition targets on a national scale. And then the final 2 points, just recruiters to find companies and candidates, and pretty much anybody that's selling to technology companies, finds some value in the data that we're providing. So today we're going to talk real specifically about a use case, and I'm going to try to keep it as generic as possible, but it's sometimes challenging not to mention vendor names or whatever, and I know we have a variety of different companies on the call today. So we're going to use backup and recovery solution as kind of an example in our fictitious use case here. This is a company that maybe had has been in the business for a while. They had more of a physical appliance-based solution. They developed that more into a cloud-based type of service offering, and they're looking for a new type of partner, managed service providers in particular. They maybe have some integration with the ConnectWise platform and Microsoft or some technology relationships they want to explore, and they believe that they're going to find good potential new partners with companies that are not the big ones. They want, they give us a definition of 3 to 20 employees, which roughly translates into $1 million to $10 million. We like to rely more on employee counts than revenue numbers because these private companies can record revenue in a lot of different ways, and they're under no obligation to really disclose it. They want an emphasis on quality rather than quantity. They're not looking to sign up 100 partners across the country. They would prefer to have maybe 20 good partners, find one good partner in each market. And they also want to look at maybe a potential competitive channel that was disrupted by an acquisition. A bigger company bought a smaller player, kind of opened the door maybe for them to some of their partners to explore different options. So the managed service provider market overall, we struggled really to find a good number of how many managed service providers are out there because so many of them define themselves as that in different ways. So what we have within our database here are roughly about 2,400 businesses, and we break those down in different ways. We have what we call classic VARs, companies that are leading with other vendors' products and bundle services around that and offer a managed service on top of that. So they typically will list company logos and things like that that they're selling. There's about 1,700 of those. 2,400 would fit that category of a type. A service provider is defined more as like a carrier, like a Comcast, AT&T of the world, or perhaps a hosting provider, or truly more a service-centric business. They obviously sell other people's products underneath, but they don't typically lead with their brands. We do have probably some vendors in the mix there and managed services. And then the last category is we typically tag them as consultants as a type if they look to be pretty small businesses and they don't really associate themselves with any manufacturer brands. So they are trying to be agnostic for vendors and lead first and foremost with a service. So we classify them as a consultant type. And then another way we can break those down is less than 5 employees is about 750 of them. Between 5 and 20 employees is almost 900. And over 20 employees, about 874 of the businesses we'll be looking at. So I'm going to move now into a live web demo. Hopefully everybody's following with me okay. I know some people showed up a little bit late. So please, if you have questions, you can use the chat box, or I have everybody on mute, but you can hit *6 to unmute if you want. So I'm logged in now as any individual user would have access, and you default into a view that gives you the high-level numbers I kind of referred to. So we have about 12,000 businesses, and we break about 1,000 of those into vendors and service providers, and the bulk of them are VARs, and then we have about 60,000 contacts. So I'm going to move now under Build a List under Accounts, and we'll move into the Accounts area, and this defaults into a view of all the businesses in here. So I'm just going to show you one of the accounts just so you can kind of get a feel for the type of information we're gathering on these businesses, and then we'll do some custom searches and identifying these managed service providers from there. So in the accounts, the first section, Company Insight, we kind of list the address, phone number, company overview. All these fields are searchable. Moving down, we classify them as a type, VAR. Solutions are broad-reaching categories, kind of loosely formed based on Gartner. So cloud computing, for example, and then technology and services typically are what comprise a solution. So cloud computing could be managed service plus security. It could be server plus hosting. What we're trying to do is accommodate the IT buyers coming in, and they're going to have different buzzwords that they're looking for and different ways that they're going to try to identify solution providers. So we can then leverage those as well for how you identify your ideal partners using kind of generic terms rather than vendor-specific terms. So we'll play around with those quite a bit. We try to get an overall employee number. Sometimes we have a breakdown of technical versus sales and an overall revenue. By and large, we're not really tracking year-over-year revenue growth, but we're trying to give you some sort of indication of, for your filters on how big the companies are. Moving down the Partner Insight, on the left-hand side, our vendor partner field is typically drawn from the public website of these companies. They list their partnerships if they're a VAR. Many of them don't if they're consultant or service provider. On the right-hand side is information typically we've verified off a manufacturer that lists their public partners that is obviously a certain level and implies maybe a volume and expertise that they have with those particular solutions. We have some distributors identified. Sometimes we show some movement. Maybe they drop certain partners, or partners got bought by a bigger company, something like that. In the final section, we don't really have this for every business, but this is what we're trying to get them to take over their profiles and volunteer more information on the types of verticals, size of customers they sell into. These are primarily headquarter locations we're tracking, so do they sell nationally? We're not trying to list all the offices around the country for these businesses. And then you can also export any of this information into a PDF if you want for these individual accounts. As you go under the contacts, you can see we list about 600 contacts, and this company has like 800 or 900 employees. So we're not listing all the contacts, but really focus on the sales and marketing and technology contacts. So if you go into any specific contact and you find one that's of interest, you go into there. Not only do we have a free-form title for you to utilize, but also we're trying to classify a department as well as a level. So if you're going to do some segmented email marketing, you can get pretty specific with that. As an individual, you can export this into a vCard and take that into Salesforce or some CRM system, or you can use this tag cloud feature to kind of maintain a list that we'll get back to in a bit, tied to your own profile. So what happens a lot of times, the marketing departments extracting bulk lists, but the sales team also has direct access to this and uses this on a daily or weekly basis to try to identify good targets. So a couple different ways you can search for businesses in here. I'm going to use one as just an example, which might be of interest, is ConnectWise. They have a platform for managed service providers. So you can search on an account name, and you'll come up with nothing because I misspelt it. Sorry about that. So we search for account name here, and we'll come up with ConnectWise, the headquarters, right? If we go under advanced search, we can search on any of the fields that I just showed you. So this is what we'll spend the bulk of our time kind of digging into here. We say vendor partners contains ConnectWise. So these are companies that have an affiliation with ConnectWise, probably their customers. Some of them might be vendors, like an ESET or something that has a relationship with them. But what's interesting here is, we've got about 130 businesses identified here. These guys don't really list their customers or partners. So this is kind of information that we've developed over time just by, updating the profiles of these businesses. So there starts to be, some interesting information that you can get access to here. So that's one way, and then you can also combine different search parameters here. You want to see ConnectWise, and they also sell Enable, and something like that. I don't know what will come up with there, but you can show combinations or exclusivity on one of those, so then you kind of narrow the focus there. So the other place to search is up here in the top right. This search searches across all the contacts and fields. It takes a little bit longer, so I'm not going to do it in the example here, but you'll come up with results for everything. It takes about 30 to 45 seconds, so I didn't want to let you stare at a blank screen there. But what we're going to do for our example here, finding these managed service providers, is we're going to go into what's essentially a saved search, which is a filter. So what we can do here is go in and edit the properties here. This is where you select which columns are going to display in our results. I picked some that I like to display just as I find them useful. You do have the ability to filter based on timestamps, like when is this modified, when it was this created. So if you're looking at a specific defined list, we can refresh that on a monthly basis with just the new relevant information. We have the ability here now to dig into and combine these different search criteria. For the sake of our example here, I created this in advance, and the kind of logic that I went through was we're looking for companies that do a service of managed services, right? We're looking for employees in a range of 3 to 20 employees. And let's just back up a second. We'll just run that filter there. That comes up with a list of about 1,000 businesses. But for the sake of our example here, we wanted to look specifically at people that are in the backup and recovery space already. Now we have a broad-reaching category for storage, right? That's one way we could go at this. But we also have a more specific granular one under technologies, which is specifically companies that offer backup and recovery types of solutions. All right, so if we narrow that kind of chopped it in half, now we're about 500 accounts. So these may, these start to look interesting to us. You can see here listed some of the partners that they're working with. Some of them may be competitors. We don't know. They're kind of all over the board. Another approach to this is we can look at, specific partner ecosystems around maybe technology integration and so forth as another way to approach this. But so let's say for the sake of our example here, we found a pretty good list here. These are guys we think are pretty worthwhile to go after in terms of a partnership. They kind of fit who we think we're going to have luck with. So now we want to do some marketing to them. Basically what we'll do is anything you see in the database we can deliver to you via CSV or Excel. We don't give customers direct access to download this, but for example this filter here, 502 businesses, we would just deliver you an Excel with any of the fields that you want in here, or all the fields. So if you just want to populate your CRM with all this data, you get it. Most people don't have direct access to import into Salesforce, so they prefer to have like a CSV or Excel type of file, so the administrator can do that, maybe dedupe it against your database in advance or different ways. So, we'll work with you however you want in terms of required fields that you need to see from it. Likewise, if we wanted to see the contacts for these 500 businesses, we would just deliver you a Excel with all the contacts if you want. For these companies, there's about 1,700 contacts. Now, this would just be a free-form title and their main address for the company. The third way we can deliver information, if you really wanted to get more targeted and specific in your marketing, either via physical mail or direct mail, we offer the ability to customize and save different types of profiles for what you're looking for, which is a combination of account characteristics as well as the contact characteristics. So for example, in our example here, we would go through and create a filter for you that would save off where you can select which fields you want delivered. Where you would select also based on the same criteria that we were looking at there, managed service provider between 3 and 20 employees, and they do backup and recovery. But then we also want to segment this. We only want the management level, and remove any of the bad emails that we have in there, so we don't even see those. And then basically you'd have the ability to get that list, and we'd deliver that via Excel. That then you can do selects and sorts based on the information there. And then the other nice thing is if you want to refresh that the next month, we can deliver you the fresh list. We will at some point offer direct access to this type of feature to download it yourself. It's just, quite honestly, the user performance is not really there yet. We didn't want you to have a bad experience with creating these reports and querying and all that kind of stuff. So we're just trying to insulate you from some of that. But this year we'll come out with another release so I'll give you direct access into that type of feature and functionality. So those are the main ways we'll deliver that information. As I mentioned before, there's some other different ways we could approach this. You can look at competitive types of channels. It's hard to do, without naming names, looking at specific channels, but you have the ability here to search on vendor partners. I'll just use Dell as an example because I know they're not on the call. We'll say vendor partners contains Aperture. Maybe it was a company they purchased a while back that did backup and recovery. So if we go vendor partners contains Aperture, whoops, that's within the filter there. We back that out and we'll see all the businesses in here. So just by the nature of having updated this for a while, we get a lot of these older types of vendor ecosystems that are in here. And then we could say maybe vendor partners doesn't contain Dell. The other thing is we have the ability to maybe exclude the partners that you already work with if we have them identified in here, so we're not feeding you company names that you're already working with. And we can say does not contain Dell, might be an example. So that narrows it down to 7 businesses. Maybe these are more specifically of interest. So that's kind of the quick run-through of the basics of it. I'm going to open it up to questions in a moment. As I mentioned before, if you do have a question, you can type something in the chat box, or you can also just hit *6 to unmute and ask us live. So this is just a success story, a company that was willing to go public with the way they use the database. Mocha 5 is a desktop virtualization VDI solution, and they utilize this very similar to how I kind of articulated in the presentation here. They were launching a partner program to virtualization and desktop management solution providers. They wanted to have they had individual reps that wanted access to a database to mine, as well as they were going to do some marketing, email marketing, to create awareness, invite people to a webinar specifically on their channel program. So they gave us some criteria based on companies that sell virtualization already. They had a particular strength in that they integrated well with Apple. on the iOS operating system. It was kind of a differentiator for us, so we did some specific lists based on that as well, so they could have a specific message around Apple tied to it. And they basically did email marketing on their own, came up with a registration of about 125 people that expressed interest in their program. They referenceable that they had less than a 0.03% opt-out rate, and ongoing signing new partners as a result of it. Our licensing, we try to make straightforward, but some people get confused by it. But basically the model is, we're trying to charge a cost per month per person. It starts at $99 for an individual. They can have access to the whole database. When the marketing department wants to actually get bulk lists, typically we try to sell an annual contract up front. We give you a 20% discount for that, and then we include a set amount of bulk contacts. So if you recall back to our example there, that list, there was about 500 businesses that we were interested in, and even though there were 1,700 contacts, there's only about 900 that were management, so that was maybe our list, right? And maybe a couple months later you want a different list or whatever, so that's kind of how we'd structure the pricing around it. And that kind of lists the different features and ways you can use it. So to summarize, Channel Navigator, really our main value proposition is we're trying to save your company time and money by bringing channel intelligence into one solution with the contacts and provide that in a self-service way. We're ongoing refreshing that data for a dynamic industry as people leave companies in and out. We're trying to keep on top of that for you. We're trying to enable the marketing and sales departments to operate out of the same solution rather than independently. So rather than go out and do a trade show and get 50 leads or what have you, they can actually access the data on an ongoing basis and not have that kind of back and forth that goes on between channel sales and marketing. And we're trying to provide you a very hard ROI and tangible result in that you get to own the contacts and the data at the end of the day. So literally for the prices that we're talking about, that the costs here, I mean, you can pay for this subscription in a week, with one new potential partner relationship based on what it costs that many people sell solutions. So with that, I'm going to open it up if people have questions, or I'll stay on the line here for a minute. If you don't, no problem. And it's an open invitation if you want to get a more specific customized demo for your unique needs. I can leave you with a login where you can test the data for yourself, that kind of thing. We're happy to do that. So I appreciate you guys making the time, and we're going to open it up to questions now if anybody has any. All right, well, if we don't have any questions, again, my email is crichter, R-I-C-H-T-E-R. You probably all have it because I sent you an email as a follow-up. Feel free to reach out to me, and I appreciate you making the time, and have a great day.